Photos with disturbing backstories. This is a photo of Judith Dole. Harvey Glattman, a known serial killer in the 1950s, would pose as a professional photographer. It was known he'd hang around modeling agencies and contact women with professional opportunities. Once lured into the apartment, he would rape them, strangle them, and then take photos before killing them.
If you found out your best friend was a murderer, what would you do? In 2011, in Port St. Lucie, Florida, Tyler Hadley was what some would consider a troubled youth. He was someone who struggled with mental illness, and from a young age, his mother pushed for him to be on antidepressants, growth hormones, all kinds of medication. Everything seemed to be under control until Tyler entered high school. He would get in fights, set things on fire, burglarize. Eventually, he wound up in St. Lucie County Jail for a week. His mom was furious and took his phone. This led to Tyler developing a hatred towards his mother. The next day at school, Tyler was telling his best friend Michael that he hated his parents and that they were too strict and that he wanted to kill his mom. Now, Michael had known Tyler his whole life and knew that he was upset and he maybe was being dramatic, so he just kind of took this comment with a grain of salt. Fast forward to July 16th, 2011, and Tyler's posting on Facebook about how he's going to have this giant house party and absolutely everybody's invited. So, on the night of the party, Michael arrived to Tyler's house and it was completely packed with strangers. He didn't know any of these people and they were totally trashing the house. It was a complete wreck. At some point during the party, Tyler pulled Michael aside outside, and as they were talking, Tyler says to Michael that earlier that day he had taken some pills and then killed both of his parents. Michael just flat out didn't believe him because of how crazy that sounded. Tyler then tells him to go in the house and look around for signs of blood. Michael does, and he finds some. At this point, Michael's shaken up a bit, but he's still not totally convinced. That is until he opens the door to Tyler's parents' bedroom. Lying on the floor are both of Tyler's parents, who are clearly no longer alive. Also in the room was heaps of broken furniture and dirty towels. I can't even begin to imagine what Michael was going through at this point, but he knew that he had to turn Tyler in. He walked over to Tyler after discovering all of this and took this picture. He knew it was going to be the last time he saw him before he was arrested. At 17 years old, Tyler was arrested and sentenced to 2 life sentences.
Photos that look ordinary until you know the backstory. Part 1. This photo was taken in a home for emotionally disturbed children in 1948. The assignment that day was to draw home on the chalkboard. While other children drew normal things like houses, the young girl below actually grew up in a concentration camp. Her chaotic scribbles are a chilling representation of her memories. This one is really dark. This is actually a photo of Lina Medina, born September 1933. When she was just 5 years old, her parents took her to the hospital with concerns of an extreme abdominal growth she had. After she was examined by the doctor, the chilling truth was revealed. Lina suffered from a rare condition called precocious puberty. In 1939, she became the youngest documented mother in medical history, giving birth to the baby boy seen below. Even more chilling, the father's identity was never discovered.
Bodies here.
By 11 a.m., police give the first indications that there are multiple fatalities inside. By 11:50 a.m., they announce most of the fatalities are children. It is almost unimaginable. 27 dead, 20 children.
If you have kids, you might want to skip this one. In 1954, a couple was having a normal day with their young son on the California coast. That was until they lost track of their child. They scrambled to look everywhere until they realized that he had wandered down to the beach. Their worst nightmare came true when unfortunately their young son was swept away by the waves. This photo was taken by John Gaunt. The most disturbing thing about this photo is that they realize that their son is now gone and they can't do anything about it. It's the moment between panic and grief. They just have to accept this tragedy and try to move on.
The photo behind me looks pretty normal, right? I know what you're thinking. Finally, Brad, you found a picture that looks normal. What this captures is 2 friends going to a bachelorette party, and it should have been just that. However, not long after this photo was taken, there was a head-on collision that occurred. Colette Moretto did not survive the crash.
Normal looking videos with disturbing backstories, part 1. In this home video on Thanksgiving Day 1990 is a father recording his son Jeffrey, who can be seen talking to his father and flipping through a magazine.
Well, I've been surviving mostly on McDonald's food. It's just so much easier just to pop into a restaurant. But
Yeah,
like I've said before, it gets too expensive and
it
I
does.
have to start eating at home more.
But what nobody knew at the time is the man in the video, Jeffrey Dahmer, had already unalived 7 of his victims and later became one of the biggest serial killers in history.
Oh my god, Justin, is that a clown? What is that? Justin, is that a clown? Is this really happening? Shut the stupid radio off. Justin, no, get back in the car. What's going on? What are you doing? He's running. Get in the car.
Call 911.
Imagine if this was the last photo ever taken of you. In 1970, Keith Sapsford had an itch to travel that simply couldn't be scratched. He was only 14 years old at the time, but he was determined to travel as much as possible. His parents weren't super well off, but they did what they could to help Keith explore his interests. They eventually gathered enough money to take a family vacation to Europe. They were hoping this trip would calm some of Keith's urges, but it only fanned the flame. After they got back, Keith began running away. There wasn't any family drama, Keith just really wanted to travel. At first, his parents would just find him and bring him back home. But as time went on, Keith got better and better at staying out for longer periods of time. With no other clear option to keep Keith in one place, his parents enrolled him in a boarding school. Not only would he go to school there, but he would also stay on campus for the duration of the school year. One day, Keith managed to escape past the guards. When he got out, he went directly to the Sydney International Airport. Keep in mind, this was the 1970s, so airport security was nowhere near what it is today. He just walked onto the tarmac and climbed into the wheel well of a plane headed for Tokyo. A photographer named John was also at the airport. He had recently got some new gear for his camera, so he wanted to test it out. As one of the planes was taking off, he snapped a bunch of photos and then put his camera away. 1 week later, when John was developing the pictures that he took at the airport, he saw this and his stomach dropped. He captured the last photo of Keith alive. When the landing gear retracted, Keith fell out of the opening to his death. Things caught on camera. In 2014, the US Navy decided to decommission one of its older ships. Standard procedure dictates that before the ship can be broken down for scrap metal, the foreman has to go on the ship and take pictures of every room. So, after it was dark, the foreman walked aboard the ship and spent some time walking around the ship, holding a camera and a flashlight, taking pictures of each room, just as he was told. After he was done, he emailed all the pictures to his boss. His boss almost immediately replies asking, "Who's the guy with the axe?" The foreman had no idea what he was talking about, until he saw that his boss had attached a photo to his reply email. I can only imagine the roller coaster of emotions the foreman must have been going through when he saw this picture. Poking around a corner was a faceless man holding an axe. The foreman had spent a ton of time on the ship and doesn't remember hearing or seeing anybody else. A search was quickly launched, but nobody was found on the ship. They also reviewed security footage of the only entrance and exit of the ship, and the only person that could be seen going in or out was that foreman.
kid drew a picture, but y'all ain't gonna believe the backstory to the picture. A mom sent some pictures to get reviewed after her son kept drawing these pictures of what he was seeing at night. Every night after 12 a.m., the son would come running into mom and dad's room saying he was seeing something standing at the end of his bed. His exact words to his mom was that it'd come out his closet at night, stand at the end of his bed, and watch him for hours. The first couple times it happened, his mom or dad would just take him back to his room and sit with him for a little bit to comfort him. But after going through that for some time, the mom and dad just end up letting him come sleep in their room. But it was this one specific night, they was all in the bed sleeping. The mom heard a door open in the hallway. She turned around and she seen everybody in the bed. That's when she realized something wasn't right, like this report.
Normal looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, part 20. This photograph was taken by Rodney Alcala, the dating game murderer. No one knows who this woman is, not even Rodney. He killed over 130 women and claims that this one was just lost among the shuffle. While this appears to be an ordinary group of people eating ice cream and playing music, it is actually a group of officers at the concentration camp Auschwitz during the Holocaust. This is Sheila Frederick, a flight attendant. She noticed that a terrified girl was accompanied by an older man, so she left a note in the bathroom on which the victim wrote that she needed help. She contacted the police, who saved her from a human trafficker. The Soviet Union actually used to airbrush people out of photos when they fell out of favor with the leadership. While this photo may appear to be of a little girl holding her younger sibling, it is actually of Lena Medina, the youngest girl to ever give birth, who had her son in Peru in 1939, after she was sexually assaulted at the age of 5.
The photo behind me looks pretty normal, right? This was a photo that was taken by investigators when parents reported their daughter missing. They claimed that one night their daughter was there and the next day she was gone. It was as if she vanished. In a state of grief, the parents would sleep in her bed, not knowing that quite literally she was right under their nose. Nobody knew this when the photo was taken, however, the child was actually at the very end of the bed. She was under the blanket, stuck between the baseboard and the mattress. After being stuck, she eventually suffocated and nobody knew. That wasn't until obviously they found her body.
Stalkers caught on camera, part 2. In 2017, Jerome Kennedy was hearing noises in his attic while he was trying to sleep. At first, he tried to brush it off, but he kept hearing the noises over and over and over, making him more and more paranoid until he called the police. So, the police show up, and Jerome and his wife explain to the police that they keep hearing strange noises in their attic, that it sounds like somebody's up there. The police then went over next door to their neighbor Robert, who denied ever hearing any noises in the attic. The police had nothing, so they couldn't do anything. Jerome was still 100% convinced something fishy was going on, so he installed a security camera up in his attic. 2 days later, Jerome called the police with something out of a horror movie. He had footage of his neighbor Robert creeping up in the attic, peering down at his family. In the video, you can see Robert holding a flashlight and a drill. Robert apparently was using that drill to drill holes to peep down at Robert and his family.